Greetings, friends of Jesus Christ, friends of Parkwood UMC, friends beyond Parkwood UMC. It's my pleasure to have you here for a meditation on Sunday, March 29th. I'm Pastor Anita Taylor, pastor at Parkwood United Methodist Church located in Durham, North Carolina. These are weird times, friends. And yet, what is it that God can say to us in the midst of these strange times? Many of us are under stay-at-home orders, particularly if you live in the state of North Carolina with Governor Cooper putting that into effect by the end of the weekend. Many of us have already been practicing staying at home. And what does that look like, particularly in the midst of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic response? Friends, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of anxiety in this time. And I'm sure that you do as well. And so as I begin most worship services when we gather in person at Parkwood United Methodist Church, I'm going to invite you all now to take a deep breath with me. Inhale and exhale, reminding us that God is as near as our next breath. As I get ready to share some scripture with you, which is recommended from the Revised Common Lectionary, I am encouraged by the opening words of Dana Trent as an article that she issued called Anxiety in Pandemic, which was published at Sojourners Online. You're welcome to find this article later. I'll provide a link to it directly on our Facebook page under this live stream broadcast. Written on March 24th, 2020, she writes, "Inhale, I am. Exhale, here now." We began with an inhalation and an exhalation, and Dana writes that our breath is our life source, God within us, all day, every day. But we don't think about the gift of air until something goes wrong. Right now, the something that has gone wrong is certainly this pandemic of COVID-19. And for many of us, this comes with a great deal of anxiety, of uncertainty, loss, grief, fear, a great uncomfortableness or unsettledness. And later in her article, Dana writes, "But anxiety is not sustainable. It never was, especially in what is likely to become a months-long global crisis. Even when we move through COVID-19 together, and we will, there will always be another crisis. The key then is learning simple and practical ways to help us cope in the midst of this particular crisis." I give thanks for Dana Trent's words that are so appropriate for us today. A reminder to breathe in, I am, to breathe out, here now. A way of grounding ourselves in the present moment, reminding us that we're here right now, and we are who we are, beloved children of God. And God still speaks to us in the midst of our anxiety, and God speaks to us through Holy Scripture. As I reflected upon Holy Scripture this week, and particularly in this season of COVID-19 pandemic, something struck me so poignantly that I feel that I must share it with you. As Christians, we live in a time called the now and the not yet. The now of the very present moment of I breathe in, I am, I exhale, here now. And yet I wait for the full reconciliation of all of God's good creation, for that establishment of the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And no more has that been felt when we live in the now of the stay-at-home order and the not yet of when we come back together to hug one another and to physical touch and close proximity with one another. I know when that moment comes, when we can come back together again, that there will be great celebration, that there will be great joy and relief. And maybe our anxiety will subside until the next round of anxiety comes. So we live in this now and the not yet of staying at home and living into this particular moment. The now and the not yet, a context of time that it was through the spoken words of God the Creator who even orchestrated time for us. For it was God's voice that called light out of darkness. And it was God's voice that called the great light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. It was the intention of God to give us time, the gift of time, the beginning of creation until the fulfillment of God's intended purpose. The gift of time, governed by the sun and by the moon and the stars and the changing constellations, the marking of seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter, where our bodies arise with the breaking of the dawn and we settle in for rest at the time of the sunset. There was this natural rhythm of rising and resting because of the gifts that God had given. Today, I suspect that many of us are walking like those dry bones, that our structures of time have dried up. School schedules, commute schedules to get to work, project deadlines, shift work that seems to never end if you are in particular lines of work. These structures that are imposed by the world have basically dried up. Matter of fact, we could throw them out the window. And what does that leave us? It leaves us a terrible bout of anxiety and concern. And then we are reminded through the words from Romans that if the Spirit of Christ is within you, you are alive. In the season of Lent, how are we finding these moments of life? How are we finding these breath moments? How are we breathing in and out? Inhalation and exhalation. Breathing in the Spirit of God. Exhaling the Spirit of God. Maybe it's through our Lenten practices. Maybe it's through being careful with our very persons. Expectation to be able to juggle all of the hats that we are needing to wear in this season, friends, is very unrealistic. It reminds me so much to offer myself the gift of grace, to offer someone else the gift of grace, to allow us space to grieve our losses, to acknowledge our places of anxiety and fear. And how might we do this? That during this time, our compassion allows us to make deep connections with one another if we follow the pain. Jesus followed the pain of Mary and Martha to that cave where their brother had been laid. It is where Jesus followed the pain to call Lazarus out from the dead, to be breathed into with new life, so that others too may see the witness that there are so much more yet to see and to believe through Christ. And the other thing that Winston shared was a sign that he wished he had taken a picture of, but one that I drew for myself that said, "Be prepared to stop." I don't know about you, but I was not prepared to stop quite like this situation has caused me to stop. For Ezekiel to look out over a valley of bones that had come to a stop, God intended to work something new, to breathe in new life, to build them back up as God's chosen people. Friends, for me, that is a word of hope. And as I live in this weird season of the now and the not yet, may we all stop. Breathe in, I am. Breathe out, here now. Let us give thanks for the moment in which we find ourselves today, trusting that God never forsakes or leaves us alone, that Christ is always with us through the gift of breath, pneuma, Holy Spirit.